This video was brought to you by Stormberg, a better route planner, MisterGreen, Kempower and Marcus Bil. Yo, what's up? In this video I'm going to show you guys the charging session on the Opel Ampera-e I borrowed recently. So remember that this is a car from 2017 with 150,000 kilometers. So let's just roll the tape and I will show you what's going on here. I included Millennium Falcon, that's the car I'm sitting in right now, and also a branch back in new e-Soul. And you see that right off the line there, the Model S goes quite high. You get that jolt of over 100 kilowatt, but then it starts slowing down. So the Model S or the Millennium Falcon has also been nerfed. It was charging way faster before, but not anymore. And also you can see that the Ampera-e was also charging faster before, but it also somehow charges slower now. So yes, you know, many people were saying that, you know, with the 1,000 kilometer challenge I did recently, I was doing it wrong. They can do it way faster. Well, be my guest and try it, because apparently the car I tried charged slower. You can see it here, and you can see also there was this YouTuber from US, some kind of Bolt YouTuber. He did 1,000 kilometer challenge and he managed to do it in roughly 12 hours. But then for me, it's impossible to do it in 12 hours simply because, well, you will see it soon. The car throttles earlier than before. And also saw on the footage, on the video that that guy made, I think his name was News Column something. His car, which was brand spanking new, you can see the odometer was only a couple of thousand miles, was charging way faster than the one I had. So, you know, why did they include the Millennium Falcon here along with the Ampera-e? Well, apparently it seems like Millennium Falcon, just like the Ampera-e, charges slower as the battery ages. And then also we just use an e-Soul, which is also kind of slow for today's standard, as a reference. And let's see, yeah, so not much to say here. Actually, Millennium Falcon has a little lead here despite having the biggest battery. But eventually you see that Millennium Falcon starts throttling. And back in the glorious days of Millennium Falcon, it was charging way faster than this. But okay, I'm going to show also, if you look on the left, Ampera-e, you see that the battery coolant is 32 degrees Celsius, which means that it's not running the cooling yet. But then if you look at the e-Soul, it does actually run the cooling if it's 10 degrees Celsius. But I actually include the e-Soul also because it seems like these cars, they use similar battery tech, and I'm not sure if these cars are, the Ampera-e is also from Korea, but I don't know if you see the similarity here, but if you look at the battery temperature on the Ampera-e versus e-Soul, they have very similar temperature, and you will see now the battery coolant on the Ampera-e is dropping, which means that cooling has kicked in. You also see the cabin AC, that is pretty massive. I never seen anything like that before. It's pulling roughly 5 kilowatt, and this is the reason why the Ampera-e is charging slower, because it needs to kick in the cooling, and then that steals power from charging the battery. And also the Ampera-e has been capped at 150 amp max, whereas actually the e-Soul is capped at 200 amp max. But many times when I did 1,000 kilometer challenge, when I hammered it hard enough, and the problem is that when you arrive and the battery is nice and hot, hotter than now, then it needs to kick in the cooling, and then you don't get 55 kilowatt. You only get 50 kilowatt or maybe slightly less than that, because the cooling is stealing it. And well, you say, yeah, but why can't you just pull extra power? Well, like I said, the number of amps is limited to 150, but it actually seems like in most cases it only pulls around 145 amps. But then when I fire up the heater, which is PTC based, not heat pump based, then it seems to pull 150 amp or close to 150 amp. But now you see, okay, I'm just showing you the footage here, what actually happened. It's charging way slower than before. With a new branch back in new car from the US, it was going at way higher rate. I think it was around 40 kilowatt at 58%. And one thing I should also point out is that when I did 1,000 kilometer challenge, the temperature was higher. So this session I did here, I only heated it enough, and then you can say that this is perfect condition. And do you see now, by the way, Ampera-e and e-Soul, they have exact same battery temperature. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. But it seems like for this kind of battery, from the Korean manufacturer, they want to stay between 25 and 35 degrees Celsius. If they go below, if they go beyond 30, well, okay, if the mean battery temperature goes below 25 degrees Celsius, it will charge slower. And if the max battery temperature goes, I'm not sure if it's 35 or 40 degrees Celsius, it will also charge slower. So you could say that the Ampera-e has a very narrow band of optimal temperature for charging. And that means that it has to run the cooling more aggressively. And also I guess it will Colgate. So yes, by the way, if you look at the clock in the middle there, it's 19:29 now. We started at 18:41, so you see it's been roughly, it's been almost 1 hour now. That's how long it takes to charge these slow-ass batteries. If you included one of the more modern cars, like a Model 3, it would be finished by now. They will reach almost 100% by 1 hour mark, but not with these batteries. So yes, so you can say that actually, I think when I did 1,000 kilometer challenge, the car was slightly rapid gating even. And I didn't know this because I would just, like I always, I mean, if I know that the car has an active cooling, I will drive it and hammer it like I always do, because it actually pays off to hammer it when you look at how fast you're charging versus how slow you will be arriving if it's slow pull. Because some people claim that, yes, you should have cruised at 110 kilometers per hour. I did cruise faster than that. But if you actually do the math, it does help. It does help in most cases. However, for the Ampera-e, because it slightly rapid gates despite having active cooling, it seems like maybe I should have put a cap on, let's say, maximum 120 kilometers per hour when I did it, and then maybe the battery wouldn't be too hot and it wouldn't slightly rapid gate on some of the charging sessions. But also remember that when you try to do your Asian math, the keyboard warriors out there, remember that I can't simply not cruise at 115 kilometers per hour throughout the whole trip, because remember that I have to drive through Gothenburg, which has 80 zone, 70 zones, 60 zones. I have to leave Oslo, which has 80 zones also. So yes, the average speed will be lower than that. But I did some calculation and I estimated that maybe, okay, I did it in roughly 14 hours, almost 14 hours, but maybe best case, in theory, we could maybe push it down to 13 hours. But getting 12 hours on this old battery that has done 150,000 kilometers is simply not possible. And again, I'm pretty sure that the limitation here is because of this car. This car charges slower, maybe because it has age, or because it has been limited software-wise, so it doesn't blow up. But okay, yeah, by the way, you see now, it's been 1 hour and 10 minutes so far. And we have reached, well, the e-Sol, I haven't paid attention. e-Sol reached 90%, but Millennium Falcon in the middle there has still not reached 90%. And then for the Ampera-e, it goes really dog slow. So, I mean, what should I say? Okay, you still have the range, kind of. The degradation test I showed you guys was really good. So it almost didn't degrade. It was around 8% only. Very, very good compared to many of the other cars I tested with smaller battery. But when it comes to charging speed, then that's a sad story, because that was not the case for the Soul and the e-Golf. They seem to charge more or less as fast as before, except for they had smaller the capacity has been reduced. But here it goes really, really slow. So one reason why okay, that's done. When I think back to the 1,000 kilometer challenge, one reason why maybe it was inefficient to drive that fast could be because as the battery ages, the internal resistance increases, and then for that car, that Ampera-e I drove, it could seem like maybe the heat was building up faster than a brand spanking new battery, and then you will encounter slight rapid gate more than if you use a brand new car. So just keep that in mind. But yes, so I admit that maybe there's a possibility that the 1,000 kilometer challenge could have been done faster. I'm not sure, because actually I have some cars that rapid gates, like the e-Golf and the Leaf. For those cars, I will drive slightly slower, because then you will get better, or you will get less overheating. And if I knew this for Ampera-e, I would probably drive slightly slower, but still don't slow poke, because if you cruise at 100 kilometers per hour, you will arrive slower, trust me. But that's the thing. I had no idea, and it seems like there are lots of Ampera-e Bolt fanboys out there who has lots of opinions. But again, like I said, be my guest. Borrow that car from Bjørn if you want to go take it for a spin and see if you can make 1,000 kilometer challenge faster. But I can bet my hat that you will not finish it within 12 hours. It will most likely be somewhere between 13 and 14 hours. So, but I have the gut feeling that my run was not the fastest given the circumstances, and given that I didn't know how the car has nerfed over the years. But like I always try to point out is that when I do 1,000 kilometer challenge, I always drive them consistently. If it's an e-Golf or a Tesla or Ampera-e or a Taycan, I will always drive consistent speed for all of them, and then we will see weakness like this. Because think about this, in Sweden we have only 110 and 120 kilometers per hour speed limits, and throughout Europe you will also have that. So it's likely that many people who get these cars around Europe and even US, they probably want to cruise at 120, 130 kilometers per hour, even faster. But that's probably not advised for an old car, right? So in a way, I would say that my test was still real world. I was trying to test it through the normal user experience procedure, but that's one thing. Another thing is that how real world is it? Because when I see Ampera-e and e-Golfs and Leafs on the road, they always drive slow, and they tend to be drafting behind the truck. So Ampera-e is also in the group where I see them drive slow. I normally don't see Ampera-e hammer it, and that could be for a reason. So, all right, a long explanation. I feel like this was not only about the charging session, but also to explain the whole 1,000 kilometer challenge, because there are some people who protested. But okay, so interesting to see this charging session. Again, wrap up is that just like the Millennium Falcon I'm sitting right now, this one in Millennium Falcon, I'm pretty sure, and we are 100% sure that Tesla nerfed the charging speed via software, because Tesla had some cases with battery fire, and by reducing the charging speed, they greatly reduced the possibility of this car and other cars catching fire. And this could also be the case with Ampera-e. If you guys haven't noticed, there was lots of cases of Ampera-e and bolts catching fire, to the point where they were getting a little bit discriminated. So some places, some parking garages and some parking lots or some places, Ampera-e bolts were not allowed to enter, simply because people heard that there was a danger of catching fire. Just like some Samsung phones in the early days, they were not allowed on airplanes because they were catching fire. So that's probably the reason why the Ampera-e I borrowed was charging slower than before. But again, it could also be aging of the battery. So, all right, now you guys have seen it, lots of information, and I don't know how to interpret all the information, but I have given you guys the information via the 1,000 kilometer challenge, and via the charging session, and via the degradation test. So hopefully you guys can, you know, dissect this and figure out what it means, because I simply don't know everything. So that's going to be it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for watching, and talk to you later.